Okay, so this presentation is on enhanced reporting requirements. It is set out to give details in relation to these obligations that are coming into effect as of the 1st of January 2024. The details contained in this presentation will explain your obligations and give you an understanding as to what you will need to do in advance or at the time when you're making these reports, as I said, beginning on the 1st of January 2024. So I suppose to start with, enhanced reporting requirements, where have they come from? So they were introduced in the Finance Act for 2022 under Section 897C. And as I said, they will require employers to report to revenue details of expensive benefits that are provided to employees and or directors. So employers would be required to make a report to revenue where a payment is made to an employee or director under one of these categories: travel and subsistence, the small benefits voucher, and a remote working daily allowance. These are subject to a commencement order, and they're due to be introduced, as I said, to come into effect beginning on the 1st of January 2024. What we're doing here is we're building on principles of real-time reporting. So what does that mean? So effectively, to report on these is built into your existing processes. In other words, payments must be reported at the same time that the payment is made to the employee or the director at that time, or in advance if that's more suitable. So it should form part of existing business flows and processes in relation to managing these types of payments. What will it be for, I suppose, is the next thing. It'll allow for the provision of meaningful and effective high-level data to the Department of Finance. And what that means is these payments are currently made tax-free. So there's a concession there that allows for an employer to make these payments, applying the right regulations and using the right guidance, and make those payments tax-free. So the Department of Finance would be able to use this information to understand how much of this is happening and what the costs are in relation to the Exchequer. On top of that, revenue compliance intervention frameworks allow for us to use data to risk assess information that's provided to us by employers. So having that information in real time will cut out on unnecessary interventions happening with employers, because we'll be able to, I suppose, assess the highest risk cases in a real-time environment, which makes it more likely that we'll be able to intervene before it becomes a long-term issue. And as I said, reduce on unnecessary compliance interventions. This will allow us then also to, I suppose, divert our resources to compliant employers. So providing a service for compliance for those employers that are working with the system. Also, it'll provide an increased visibility and assurance to employees. So this will be available to employees as of the 1st of January next year, or 1st January 2024 to be specific, and it is going to show up as non-taxable payments in their My Account services. Okay, so as I said, the principles that this is being based on are leveraging existing, I suppose, real-time reporting principles, and that will be similar to the payroll reporting that you'd be all familiar with. We will be providing a facility in ROS, in the Revenue Online Services, to enable employers to submit, amend, correct the enhanced reporting requirement data, and also check the data at submission level. So you'll be able to take out a report and see what has been submitted on a monthly basis. This facility will give employers, this facility is giving employers access through ROS, but further facilities may be provided by third-party software providers. So we have been engaging with third-party software providers since early this year in a way to allow them to provide that service to you through their own software that you may be already using. The functionality is said for employees to view this will also come in 2024, and they will be able to get high-level data as to what was reported, as I said, and that information will be provided in ROS also for employers under the different categories for each month. So some more details on the categories. So as I said, there are three categories that falls into: the travel and subsistence, the small benefit vouchers, and the remote working daily allowance. For this travel and subsistence payment, what we're looking for, the detail we're looking for, is the date and the amount paid under each of the following subcategories. So travel vouched, travel unvouched, travel subsistence vouched, subsistence unvouched, site-based employees, including country money, emergency travel, and eating on site. So basically, any payment that is being made to an employee director from the 1st of January 2024 under any of those subcategories must be reported at the time that you're making the payment to the individual or in advance of that if that's more suitable. Just to give some clarity, as we have some questions sometimes on what the difference is between a vouched and an unvouched subsistence and travel claim. Effectively, a vouched claim is a claim that is provided for with the existence of a receipt. So a receipt is provided as evidence of that expense by the employee. An unvouched would not require a receipt, but would be within set rates that can be looked up. If you go to the various travel and subsistence guidelines, you can see the set rates that can be paid on an unvouched basis. The small benefits then exemption, so vouchers used are provided to employees through the small benefits exemption or other gifts would be reported using this system. So the small benefits exemption allows an employer to provide up to 2 benefits in any calendar year that cannot exceed a total of €1,000. So that might be 2 gifts or 2 vouchers of €500 or a mix of those amounts, but it cannot exceed 2 benefits being provided under that scheme. Again, information on that small benefits exemption scheme can be found on our web pages. If you go to the Enhanced Report Requirements Hub, we have links in there to give further details on each of them. And then the remote working daily allowance. So again, this is a payment that can be made tax-free by employers for employees who are working from home. So for this payment, we're looking again for the date of payment and the amount of the payment, but also looking for the number of days that are being reported in that submission. So if you are paying for 5 days for the week beginning in January, you report 5 days, the amount that you paid, and the date that the payment is made to the employee. It's also important to note that these payments can be made ad hoc. They can be made monthly or weekly or fortnightly, depending on the business practices. But the point at which they must be reported is at the time that the payment is being made to the employee or director. So if you do that weekly, you can report that weekly. If you do that daily, you can do that daily, but it's completely up to yourselves. A couple of points again, just to clarify, we see some questions arising around these elements. So only incurred expenses by the employee will be reported. So what does that mean? So if the employee, out of their own pocket, must pay for subsistence or travel related to their work, again, the regulations can be referred to understand the complexities of that. But where that incurred expense is then reimbursed by the employer must report that then using the appropriate, I suppose, category or subcategory. So an example of something that may be out of scope. So if a company credit card or a prepaid card is being used by the employee to pay for their travel or subsistence, well, then that won't need to be reported, as the employee has not incurred that expense themselves and the employer is not reimbursing the employee for that expense. So I suppose another example there would be things like fuel cards or toll tags or car insurance or motor tax. If they're paid directly to the service provider by the employer and the employee has no payment to make in relation to it themselves, well, then that does not fall into scope, as the payment has not been incurred by the employee and has been completely covered by the employer directly with the service provider. So the other side of it then is the employees or directors. So there will be no report required outside the definition of an employee or director. I think the rule of thumb that would be applied to this effectively is that where an emolument is being paid to an employee or to an individual, well, then that person is an employee. So if you're paying emoluments to a person, then they are an employee and you are their employer. And a director is, as set out in legislation, a director under that definition. Country money, as I said, is included under the travel and subsistence subcategory of site-based employees. Again, this is just a terminology that's used regularly, but it is again in the tax and duty manuals that you'll find links to on our webpage, details out the information that's related to each of those subcategories. We won't be looking for details about kilometres travelled under the travel category, or will we be looking for the CC of a vehicle, or will we be looking for the destination that they travel to? Again, it's the payment amount under the appropriate subcategory and the date that the payment was paid. One thing to note is that any payments which exceed the thresholds they will be obviously subject to normal tax rules and taxable at the point of payment. Again, if you're making payments under any of those categories, you should familiarise yourself with the obligations that apply to them and ensure that you're making those payments correctly, and that if the payment then is taxable, that is reported in the appropriate mechanism, which will be the payroll reporting system. This is just a notice that we sent out back in March, and this is in relation to, I suppose, third-party software providers. So what we looked for in this notice was employers and agents and members of different representative bodies to, I suppose, contact their software providers and inform them or inquire with them as to whether or not they were looking to provide, I suppose, solutions within their software for these requirements. This, I suppose, helped feed into a service user group that was set up then back in March, in which Revenue was hosting those stakeholder engagements with those software providers to ensure that they had the information they needed to provide the solutions to their clients. And that has been ongoing since March and April this year. There's a large number of software providers that have engaged with that process. If you're unsure as to whether your software provider is engaged in that process, I urge you to contact them directly, as we can't give a list out of those stakeholders. It's commercially sensitive information, so we urge you to contact them directly and inquire as to whether or not they're providing the services needed to report this through their payroll or through their financial management system, or whichever management system you're using to record these payments currently. So this is an ongoing, I suppose, what's happening now is this is an ongoing development. We are pretty much finished on the information that we need to provide and to allow you to do this reporting through the Revenue Online services. As I said, the engagement with the software providers, the third-party software providers, is to allow them to develop systems so that they can connect seamlessly with our services, so that when you're recording these payments on their systems, you should be able to report it seamlessly into our systems. Again, similar to how you would see a payroll report being reported to us, that it happens, I suppose, in the background without the individual necessarily having to do any direct connection to the revenue systems. But again, depending on the interface that's provided by the third-party provider, that may be a direct connection using an API, if you're familiar with that, or they may produce a file that allows you to upload that file into the Revenue Online services. So I said that engagement was ongoing. We had that with software providers, with some employers and tax agents and their representative bodies to give them, as much information and as much time as possible to prepare. So this section, I'm going to talk to the, services that are being provided in the Revenue Online services, friends. So one thing to note is that if you're using a third-party software provider and that software provider is providing an interface with our systems directly, the screens that they will provide may differ from the ones that are on screen now, because these are what you will get when you come in and use our services to directly report this information. So again, clarify the structure and the setup and the flow of this reporting mechanism with your third-party provider if they're going to provide the service separately. But for the purpose of this presentation, we're going to describe the screens that are in the Revenue Online services. And these will be made available by December this year, so you can start reporting in advance if necessary at that point in time. So this is the employee services card that you will see when you log into ROS if you go into client services. As you can see there, there's similar, areas for payroll that are in the same section. So, it should be straightforward to identify them. So the first thing that we need to do is we need an employer reporting notification. So this can be done by file upload. So what is an ERN, or an employer reporting notification? So effectively, because this system is independent of payroll, so you can make these payments directly without having access to the payroll system. What we need to do is provide a facility where you can get the employee ID, where you don't have that available to you if you're not a payroll operative in the organisation. So an employer report notification can be submitted to Revenue with the PPS numbers and the details of the employee that you're going to report the enhanced reporting requirement payments for, and we will then return a value that will give you the employee ID for that individual. So to start with, you again log into your Revenue Online Services through the Client Services portal and the Employer Services. You can see there Employer Report Notifications ERN. So you click on that button. In here, you can effectively upload the file. So the file format for uploading in this under Enhanced Report Requirements is either JSON or the XML format. So they're the only two file types that will be allowed to be uploaded. So once you have your list of employees or directors and their PPS details, you can then upload that file to Revenue, input in your digital certificate details, and you sign and submit, and we will immediately return a report giving you the details. So you can see here on screen, for one employee, the ERN was returned, and this is then used as part of the process for uploading the Enhanced Report Requirement payments. So when you're uploading them, you'll have the employment ID and you'll have the PPS number then to fulfill those requirements. So once you have all the information you need, you can then choose from two options. You can upload a file of a bulk amount of details. So this may be multiple employees or directors and multiple categories and multiple days. And you can upload that through our services, again using the XML and JSON format. Or you can complete the form online through the screens that we'll demonstrate now momentarily. So again, back to the Client Services screen under Employer Services. Under Enhanced Report Requirements, you can submit expenses and benefits. So to do this by file upload. So in the screen, you can see you can click on Submit Expense and Benefits by file upload. You will then be brought to the screen where you can browse for the file that you have created or that your software has created for you. And again, you'll be asked to sign and submit your details using digital certificate in ROS. And that'll be either accepted or rejected by our system as long as it fulfills the requirements of as I said, the file format. So once we receive the information, you will get an acknowledgement, and that will allow you then to have a reference point to show that that file was uploaded appropriately to our services. Again, on the screen you can see you can continue to view the expense submission, or you can return back to the original page. The other option is the online form. So again, this is the option that would be most suitable for smaller I suppose reporting requirements. So it might be a small number of employees that are paid throughout the week, and you want to report this without an XML file or JSON file, or you're not using third-party software. So again, this is to provide a facility for you to meet the requirements through our services. So again, we go back to the screen where you're going to submit your expenses and benefits online, and in this case you complete the form, the online form, and you click on the button there. Obviously select the year that's relevant, and in this case we're looking at 2024. So the first screen that you get will either have details of people who have previously been recorded for Enhanced Report Requirements, or it'll be blank, at which point you can add a new employee, or you can select the one that has previously been reported, and you can edit the details here also. Once you have selected the details, or if you're going to add a new employee, you'll have to add the details for that employee to the system. So what we need here are PPS number, employment ID, and first name, family name, and address. So depending on the information available, you'll have to complete different fields. Where the PPS number is not available, or the employment ID is not available, you'll need the employer reference. You'll need also the personal details and the date of birth and the address. And this is to allow us to find a facility to match these at a later date. Where the PPS number is provided, then the employee details screen should be completed. Once you have selected the appropriate employee, you would then be brought to screen to enter in the category or the subcategory as where relevant. In this case, we're showing a category of travel and subsistence with the subcategory of travel vouched, and a payment made of €50 on the 26th of June in 2023. Obviously, these payments will be made from the 1st of January 2024, so we'd expect to see a payment date from the 1st of January 2024 or later. So once you're happy that you have the information for the employee, you can add another employee to this submission, or you can continue with the one employee that you have added. So you get a summary of the information that has been provided for that individual, and you'll have the option here to add another amount or another travel category or another subsistence category or small benefit examples, and you can continue to do that until you have all of the information that you want for this submission, or if you're happy that you have all the information for that particular submission, you can submit this to us. So again, through the usual procedures, you'll need to select the right certificate from Ross and enter your passwords and submit that then. So that'll be signed and submitted, and again, you get an acknowledgement from us. In cases where you have started the process but not submitted it, we will hold that information for you, so you will have the option to, I suppose, continue with the submission that you didn't submit previously, and you can make amendments to that. So these are partially saved submissions that are held on our records, so you can, as I said, either continue with that or you can discard that information and start again. This screen is showing, I suppose, a small benefit exemption payment. Now, you'll see from this screen that the amount being reported is €2,000. Now, as I said earlier, for the small benefit exemption, the maximum that can be provided in any given year is €1,000, and that could be broken down into up to two payments or two gifts or two vouchers, for example. So the amount should not exceed €1,000 in total for the year. So where we get information that seems to be outside of the parameters that we'd expect it to be in, we are going to provide a warning or a notice within the Ross screens to flag this to you and give you the opportunity to make an amendment. So in this case, you'll get a report back, and the warning, as you can see here, saying that the benefit cannot exceed €1,000. So again, you can still submit this information. That's information that you're providing to us, but the information will be on our system, and it would be deemed, I suppose, invalid insofar as that additional €1,000 should have been reported through the payroll and taxed accordingly. Another example for that type of warning is in the remote working daily allowance. So again, there's a limited number of days in the year that anybody can work or work from home, and there's a maximum amount that can be paid. The daily rate is currently €3.20. That can be made tax-free. So if somebody reports to us that they made an amount of €50,000, again, we will flag that exceeds the allowable amount. And this should serve, I suppose, as a way to not only flag that an error has possibly occurred, but to keep an eye on, I suppose, the fact that you may have added in another zero or something just inadvertently. So, Ross display expenses and benefits to employer. What else do you need? A report. So effectively everything that you are going to submit to us on a daily, weekly, monthly basis will be available in a report for you to take from our system so that you can, I suppose, see what has been submitted in the given period. So you can see from here that there's a number of ways to look for these reports, either by recent runs that have been uploaded into the system, by a particular year or month, or the run reference that's applicable to it, or the submission ID that's applicable to it. So what we will provide here is high-level data on the submission that has been made by the employer or the agent on their behalf over the course of a period that you selected. So this high-level information will just give details of the individual expenses in a report that can be used to reconcile against your existing records. So to access this, again, we go to our client services page under the employer services, and you can see the monthly report option highlighted. So this example, we're showing, I suppose, a period of July, and you can generate that report using the button here. Again, this is an example of what that may look like. And you can see for the period July 2023, There was one submission made, total amount of €500, and it was done under the small benefits exemption. So this can be printed off and then, as I said, used to reconcile against the information that you hold on your own systems. There's no facility to download this report. It'll be available to print, or you could print it to a PDF document. So for employees, what will they see? As I said earlier, it'll be made available in My Account so that employees will be able to log in and look at the information that's being reported by their employer. Once they log into My Account, they will be able to select the expensive benefits, as you can see on screen here. And I'll just show a few screens of what they will be able to see once they come into this portal. So in this case, they'll be able to view the year that they're inquiring about. Obviously, it'll be 2024 once this goes live. And they'll be able to view all the expenses and benefits submitted by their employer by clicking on the View button there. So on this screen, you can see an example where the employer or the employee, should I say, has one or multiple employers that are reporting for them. So they'll be able to select the relevant employer and view the details appropriate to that particular employer. Again, they may be in a partnership or a civil partnership or that, and the individuals will be able to look at the payments that are made on behalf of each other once they have the appropriate setup on our services. So in terms of details, this is an example of a breakdown that the employee may see once they come in to look at what has been reported by their employer. So in this example, they can see that there was a travel and subsistence under vouched and unvouched, total of €400, and they can view some of the details then on that also. So that brings us towards the end of the presentation. As you can see on screen here now, we have further information. So again, I'd refer you to go to the www.revenue.err hub, where we were going to update that information on a regular basis. In there, you'll also find information around the various payments that we discussed